Removing Black history from its proper context has taken place since the 18th century. However, there seems to be renewed interest as of late in order to advance certain political agendas. This is why it's critical for people of African descent to know and understand our history from the best historical lens available. Black history in America is well documented, and so that backdrop of historical information must always be considered. Today, we're going to be speaking about one of the critical ramifications of housing segregation. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and contributing to this content. The link to Patreon is in the description box below. Also, stay tuned with the word from my sponsors.
Hello, my name is Howard Dorsey. I'm 54 years old. I'm here to talk about my experience with Herbal Results. I was getting sick, so I went to the doctor. And they told me that my blood pressure was high, my cholesterol was borderline or high, so I was very sick. You know, sometimes I thought I was dying at some point. And I ordered a bottle of olive leaf extract. This is how the bottle comes in. And within the first probably week and a half, 2 weeks, I checked my blood pressure and it was back down to normal. It was like 120/80. My cholesterol went down to 125. You know, I definitely believe that olive leaf extract from Herbal Results saved my life. And that's real. I mean, I recommend it to everyone in my family, my friends, and we've seen a lot of results in that manner as well.
Purchase now at herbalresults.net.
To begin, the purpose of the video is to document this history for the diaspora in hopes that we'll understand some of what we see today and be able to challenge pernicious narratives on Black history. This video only scratches the surface and is introductory in nature. Many things that took place in 20th century America determined the modern condition of Afro-descended people, and housing segregation is one of them. So please keep this context in mind. Housing segregation in America, simply put, was the zoning or barring of the Black community's entry into white designated neighborhoods. There were diverse ways it was accomplished, but ultimately it was the birth child of systemic and structural racism. Housing segregation established multiple negative outcomes for the Black community, wealth accumulation being principal. However, it's not often we hear how industrial waste facilities were purposefully and disproportionately placed in Black communities, contributing to devalued properties, health issues, and the overall slum narrative. According to one source, civil rights organizations began to take on what was called environmental justice in the 1980s. In 1979, one African American community in Houston protested against hazardous waste landfills being dumped in their vicinity. Residents of Houston's Northwood Manor suburban neighborhood filed the first lawsuit charging environmental discrimination, citing Houston's long history of locating its solid waste facilities in African American communities. Houston residents fought Browning Ferris Industries' location of a municipal solid waste landfill in their community. The citizens lost the 1979 lawsuit, but it was the first case to use civil rights law to challenge the siting of a waste facility. The main issue and the point of contention was not the existence of hazardous waste facilities, but the proliferation of waste facilities in Black communities. In other words, Black communities were targeted for dumping sites. The question is, was this actually true? Were Black communities specifically targeted? Scholar Richard Rothstein directs us to some studies that seem to support this suspicion. He tells us that the presence of industrial waste facilities in Black communities was increasingly common throughout American cities. The pattern was confirmed in a 1983 analysis by the U.S. General Accounting Office, concluding that across the nation, commercial waste treatment facilities or uncontrolled waste dumps were more likely to be found near African American than white residential areas. In 1991, the Environmental Protection Agency issued a report confirming that a disproportionate number of toxic waste facilities were found in African American communities nationwide. A countervailing narrative attempted to excuse the data by claiming that African Americans moved into communities that already had toxic waste dumps, essentially pointing the finger. Though this had some truth to it, skeptics preferred to disassociate from the full scope. The principal reason some African Americans moved to communities that already had industrial waste facilities was because their options were severely limited by housing segregation. For example, federal government programs like the FHA segregated access to loans based on race. Moreover, they were actively involved in designating entire suburbs for white residents only. The FHA had its biggest impact on segregation, not in its discriminatory evaluations of individual mortgage applicants, but in its financing of entire subdivisions, in many cases entire suburbs, as racially exclusive white enclaves. This wasn't just exclusive to the FHA, but New Deal programs as a whole founded by President Roosevelt back in the 30s. Aside from the wealth disadvantage, housing segregation indirectly contributed to the physical health of the Black community as well. One city in Tennessee hosted a community that lived on land purchased by their ancestors after the Civil War. County officials decided to dump toxic waste there. In 1968, county officials converted the Black community's only park into a dump where local companies began burying drums of industrial waste. Chemicals from the dump seeped into the well water that the Black families used to drink, bathe, and cook. By the time they were alerted to the danger in 2000, it was too late. Virtually every family in the Black community in Dickson County has someone who has died from or is battling cancer. Scholar David Newman tells us that the greater proportion of Black residents in a community, the more likely it is that there will be industrial sources of air pollution within a 2-mile radius of people's homes. These are very morbid bits of well-documented information, but it's critical that we adhere to this historical approach so that narratives addressing our issues and our current condition are not adulterated. As evinced earlier, housing segregation had other negative impacts on the Black community. The environmental factor is just one of them. I encourage everyone in the diaspora to learn more about Black history in its full scope, so that we'll be able to not only understand what we see today, but disarm narratives that seek to neglect historical context. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.